The restlessness you cannot explain is my hand around your roots, and I am pulling you out of this ground. Do not scroll past this. What I am about to say is the reason you have not been able to settle, the reason peace will not stick where you are standing, the reason every attempt you have made to convince yourself that this place is enough has failed. Not because you are ungrateful, but because your roots have outgrown the soil they are planted in, and I am the one disturbing them. I am uprooting you, on purpose. Right now, you have been feeling it for months, maybe longer, a displacement that has no logical explanation. Everything around you looks fine. The ground is familiar, the environment is known, but something beneath the surface is shifting, and you cannot stop it. You have tried. You have pressed your roots deeper. You have told yourself to be content, to stop wanting more, to stop feeling like you belong somewhere else. But the feeling will not obey, because the feeling is not coming from you. It is coming from the gardener, and the gardener has decided, not suggested, not hinted, decided, that the soil you are standing in can no longer support what you are becoming. The roots that felt like home were actually being slowly strangled by ground that was never meant to hold the full weight of what I designed you to grow into. I am not destroying you. I am relocating you. And before you resist, before you grip the old ground tighter out of fear, I need you to hear what I have prepared on the other side of this uprooting. New ground, deeper soil, space your roots have never known. Stay with me. What I reveal next will explain why you could never settle, and why that was the plan all along. Type uprooted if you have been feeling a restlessness you cannot explain, and something inside you just recognized it as the hand of God beginning to move you. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something that genuinely surprised me. A neuroscientist discovered a simple 7-second technique that actually rewires how your brain processes thoughts. And when I tried it, the difference was almost unsettling. My focus sharpened, ideas started connecting faster, and that mental fog, gone. This isn't manifestation nonsense. It's backed by real brain science, and thousands of people are already seeing results. But here's the catch, only 5 spots are left. If something inside you is saying, try it, trust that instinct. Click the link in the description or pin comment before it's too late. The ground beneath you has been rejecting your roots for longer than you have been willing to admit. You felt it, the slow starvation, not the dramatic kind that announces itself with a crisis. The quiet kind, the kind where you are technically alive, but nothing is flourishing. Your leaves are present, but they are not full. Your branches are extending, but they carry no fruit. You look like a tree that is standing, but you feel like a tree that is slowly suffocating. And you have been blaming yourself for the lack of growth when the problem was never you. The problem is the soil, and I am the one who knows the difference. Something is happening right now that goes beyond a feeling or a passing season of dissatisfaction. I am actively loosening the ground around your roots, disturbing connections that felt permanent, unsettling routines that felt stable, shaking foundations that you built your sense of security on top of. And the instability you have been experiencing is not chaos. It is the deliberate work of a gardener who has decided that today is the day the transplant begins. This is not random upheaval. This is a divine relocation order. I need you to understand that this message was not scattered into the wind, hoping to find someone who relates. It was planted, like a seed, in the exact path of the one person whose roots are being disturbed by my hands at this very moment. You are not one of many hearing this. You are the one whose ground I am currently breaking open. The displacement you have been carrying is not a defect in your character. It is a signal from the gardener that the transfer has been authorized, signed, sealed in heaven. And the soil I am moving you toward was prepared long before the restlessness began whispering your name. What I reveal next is why this ground could never hold what I planted inside you, and what the new ground was designed to produce. Type transfer if you have been trying to force yourself to grow in a place that has been slowly starving you, and you just realized the problem was never your effort but the soil itself. I planted you in that first soil on purpose, but I never intended for you to stay there forever. That is the part you have been missing. You assumed that where I placed you was where I planned to keep you. You looked at the ground, studied the conditions, committed to the environment, and built your identity around being a tree in that specific location. And I let you, because the first soil was necessary. It gave your roots their initial grip. It taught you how to stand. It showed you what it means to push through hard ground and survive seasons that offered you very little nourishment. But survival soil is not the same as destiny soil. I have been watching you outgrow that ground for longer than you realize. I saw the first sign. The moment your roots hit a layer they could not penetrate. You pushed harder. You adjusted your angle. You did everything a faithful tree does when the ground resists. And I watched with a pride that you would not believe, because your effort told me exactly what I needed to know. You were ready for deeper ground. I have been tracking your growth the way a gardener measures the crown of a tree against the depth of its root system, knowing that when the branches extend beyond what the roots can support, the tree does not need more discipline. It needs more soil, and your branches have been reaching past the edges of where you are planted for so long that the imbalance has become dangerous. You are not discontent. You are root-bound. I chose you for this conversation because the relocation I am performing is not a general reshuffling. It is a specific, measured, hand-guided transplant of one tree that I have been cultivating since before it broke the surface. And I need you to trust my hands, even though what they are doing right now feels like everything you built is being torn apart. What I tell you next is what happens to a tree that was root-bound the moment the gardener places it in open ground. Type cultivated if you just realize that God has been personally watching your growth. And the restlessness you feel is not discontent, but the sign of a tree that has outgrown its current soil. I know what it feels like to be rooted in ground that does not feed you. You have never said it that way, not out loud. You have used other words. I am just going through a season. I need to be more grateful. Maybe I am expecting too much. You have curated an entire vocabulary of self-correction, designed to talk yourself out of the ache that lives beneath every day you spend planted in soil that is slowly tightening around the very parts of you that need the most room. But the ache does not listen to your corrections, because the ache is mine. I placed that restlessness inside you the same way I placed the instinct in a tree's roots to seek water. It is not optional, it is not emotional, it is biological at the spiritual level. You were not built to thrive in soil that cannot support your next season. And the discomfort you have been managing, the one you apologize for, the one you suppress in public, the one you confess to yourself at night, as though feeling it is a sin. That discomfort is the root system sending a signal to the trunk that the ground has run out of what you need. You are not ungrateful. You are starving. I saw the afternoon you drove home and sat in the car for an extra 10 minutes because walking into your current life required a moment of preparation. Not because anything terrible was waiting, because the sameness was waiting. The tightness was waiting. The familiar ceiling that presses down on your growth every single day was waiting, and entering it again required the kind of emotional adjustment that no one around you would understand if you tried to explain it. So you did not explain. You walked in, smiled, continued, and I watched you carry the weight of unexplained displacement in a body that was designed for open ground, pressing yourself into a space that I already measured as too small, convincing yourself that the compression was character building, when it was actually slowly crushing root systems that I needed to stay alive. The compression was not building you, it was binding you, and I have watched long enough. The part that nobody sees is how hard you have tried to make this soil work. You did not just passively accept where you were planted, you actively fought to thrive in it. You adjusted your expectations. You pruned your own branches to fit the space. You cut back parts of yourself that were reaching too far, growing too wide, stretching too ambitiously for a ground that could not sustain the expansion. And every time you trimmed yourself down to fit the environment, you told yourself it was maturity. It was not maturity. It was a tree mutilating itself to match insufficient soil. I watched you shrink, not physically, something deeper. The version of yourself you present in your current environment is a reduced version. A version with the edges filed down and the height managed, and the fullness deliberately contained, so that the people and the systems around you are not made uncomfortable by what you were actually designed to become. And the exhaustion of that containment is something only you and I know about. You are tired in a way that has nothing to do with how much sleep you get. This tiredness lives in the part of you that knows, has always known, that there is more inside you than this ground will ever allow to surface. More creativity, more capacity, more calling, more life. But the soil is too shallow, and the space is too tight, and the nutrients are too thin to support what is pressing against the inside of your bark, demanding to be expressed. You have been managing a famine that nobody else can detect. And the loneliest part is that the people around you, the ones who share this ground, they seem fine. They are growing at the pace the soil allows, and it appears to satisfy them. So you stand among them feeling like something is wrong with you for wanting deeper earth, for needing more room, for being unable to settle into a space that everyone else seems perfectly content with. Nothing is wrong with you. You are simply a different species of tree planted in soil that was designed for a smaller kind. Type deeper if you have been cutting yourself down to fit a space that was never built for your full growth. And you are tired of being a reduced version of who God made you to be. Every season you spent in that soil served a purpose I designed before I planted you in it. I need you to hear this before we go further. The ground you are being removed from was not a mistake. I did not accidentally place you in the wrong soil and then spend years trying to correct an error. The first soil was intentional. It was selected for the exact conditions it provided, conditions that were necessary for the earliest stages of your development, but were never meant to sustain the full span of what I am growing you into. The first ground was a nursery, not a destination. Nursery soil is shallow on purpose. It keeps roots contained so that the young tree focuses its energy on building a strong trunk, rather than spreading wide before it has the structure to support the expansion. And that is exactly what happened in you. The limitations you experienced, the tightness, the lack of room, the frustrating absence of depth, those were nursery conditions. They forced you to grow upward, to develop internal strength, to build the kind of dense, resilient core that most trees never develop because they were given too much room too early. The restriction produced what permission never could have, and the people who let you down in that soil. The relationships that could not hold the weight of your real self. The environments that punished your expansion. The systems that rewarded your shrinking. Those were not enemies. They were nursery walls. Temporary structures designed to shape your early growth, and then be removed when the shaping was complete. The shaping is complete, and the walls are coming down. The guilt you feel about wanting to leave. The voice that tells you that you should be grateful for this soil because it kept you alive. That voice is telling you a half-truth. Yes, it kept you alive, And I am grateful for every year it held your roots. But keeping you alive was never the full assignment. The full assignment is bringing you to full bloom. And that requires ground this nursery was never built to provide. The nursery season is honored, but it is finished. And what I am doing next is the reason the nursery existed in the first place. The new soil has been prepared, and I need you to understand how long I have been working on it. While you were trying to force your roots deeper into ground that kept rejecting them, I was on the other side of a field you have never visited, turning soil, adjusting composition, testing depth, measuring nutrient levels against the exact requirements of a tree with your specific species, your specific root system, your specific growth trajectory. I was not idle during your restless season. I was gardening in a location you could not see. The new ground has been in preparation for years. Something has been shifting in the last few weeks, and your spirit has registered it, even if your mind has not processed it yet. A loosening, not the terrifying kind where the ground disappears beneath you all at once. The preparatory kind. The kind where the soil around your roots softens just enough for you to notice that the grip is changing. That what once held you firmly is now holding you gently. That the earth is no longer clinging to your roots but releasing them. That is my hands in the dirt. Working slowly, working carefully. I do not uproot violently. I do not tear a tree from the ground and leave its root system damaged and exposed. I loosen the soil first. I create space between the roots and the earth so that when the moment of transfer comes, the separation is clean. Painful, yes. Clean, always. And what I have been loosening around you is the emotional and circumstantial grip that this current ground has had on your identity. You are being detached with precision, not ripped out with force. The connections that feel like they are changing, the subtle shifts in how your current environment holds you, those are not signs of something going wrong. Those are signs of a gardener who has begun the transplant procedure and is working his way toward the moment when the entire root system lifts free. What I am about to show you is the ground I have been preparing, and why your roots will recognize it the moment they touch it. Type prepared if you have been sensing something loosening around you lately, and you now believe it is God's hands making room for the relocation He has already authorized. God is moving you from where you were to where you belong, and the two locations are nothing alike. That is the part that frightens you most. If the new soil looked like the old soil, if the relocation was simply a lateral transfer to familiar ground with slightly better conditions, your fear would be manageable. But what I am moving you into does not resemble what you are leaving. The depth is different. The composition is different. The climate is different. And the tree you will become in the new ground will bear so little resemblance to the tree you have been in the old ground that people who knew you before will struggle to recognize what is standing in front of them. The relocation is not an adjustment, it is transformation. And this is precisely why you have been restless, rather than simply uncomfortable. Discomfort asks for improvement. Restlessness asks for relocation. Your spirit has known the difference, even when your mind tried to solve the feeling with small adjustments. A new routine, a new approach, a new way of arranging yourself within the same soil. You rearranged, and the restlessness did not decrease, because rearranging a tree within soil that cannot sustain it does not solve the problem. Only transplanting solves the problem. You have been applying adjustments to a transplant situation. This is why you waited. Not because I was teaching you patience as an abstract virtue. Because the new ground required specific conditions that were not ready until now. I have been composting your future soil with experiences you have not yet had, nutrients you have not yet encountered, depth you have not yet tasted. And every month that passed while you sat restless in the old ground, was another month of preparation happening in the new ground that you could not see. The waiting was not idle time. It was gardening time, and the divine relocation order that was signed in heaven over your life, the one that authorized this transplant before the restlessness ever began. That order is now being executed. Not planned, not considered, executed. My hands are in the soil of your current position right now, and they are not adjusting the ground. They are lifting you out of it. Your roots are almost free, and the new ground is closer than your fear is telling you. I can feel the tension in you right now, the simultaneous pull of wanting to be lifted and wanting to hold on. It is the most human response a tree can have. The roots grip harder in the final moments before the transplant, not because the old soil became better, but because the familiar always tightens its hold when it senses it is about to be replaced. Everything in your current environment is going to grip tighter in the coming days. Relationships will intensify. Obligations will press. Guilt will make its loudest argument right at the threshold of your departure. That tightening is not confirmation to stay. It is the old soil's last attempt to hold you. I need you to feel how close you are to the new ground. Not in years, not in months. The space between where you are and where I am planting you has narrowed to a distance that your spirit can almost measure. The reason your restlessness has intensified recently is not because things are getting worse. It is because proximity amplifies the signal. The closer you get to where you belong, the louder the displacement feels in the place where you do not. You are not falling apart. You are being extracted. And I need you to trust the exposure. When a tree is lifted from the ground, its roots are suddenly naked, visible, vulnerable, suspended in open air between the old soil and the new. That is the most frightening phase of any transplant. The phase where you belong to nothing, where the old ground is behind you and the new ground has not received you yet, where you hang in the hands of the gardener with nothing beneath you except his grip. You are entering that phase now, and my grip has never failed. The next thing I reveal is the moment your roots make contact with the ground I built for you, and what happens to a tree when it finally touches soil that was designed for its exact root structure. Type lifted if you can feel yourself being pulled from around right now. And you are choosing to trust the gardener's hands, even though you cannot yet see where he is planting you. Your roots just touched new soil, and the ground is receiving you like it has been waiting for you its entire existence. This is the moment. The divine relocation order is being executed, not in concept, not in metaphor, not as a promise suspended in some future season you will have to earn your way into. Right now. The gardener's hands are lowering you into ground that was composed specifically for the chemistry of your root system. And the moment of contact between your roots and this new earth is producing a reaction that neither the old soil nor the old you could have ever generated. The ground is responding to you. Can you feel it? This is what belonging feels like. Not the manufactured contentment you forced in the old soil. Not the disciplined gratitude you performed to mask the starvation. Real belonging. The kind where the soil opens to receive the roots rather than resisting them. Where the nutrients rush toward your system instead of requiring you to fight for every drop. Where depth is not a ceiling you hit, but a corridor that keeps expanding the further down you reach. You were never meant for shallow ground. I built you for this depth. The restlessness is stopping, not because you willed it to stop, not because you finally achieved the right mindset or the correct spiritual posture. It is stopping because a tree that has been placed in its designed soil does not produce the signal of displacement anymore. The signal shuts off, the searching stops, the roots stop reaching sideways, looking for what is not there. Because everything they need is right here, right beneath them. saturated into the ground I spent years preparing. This is where you belong, without question, without caveat, without the quiet asterisk you have been placing beside every experience of peace, because you did not trust it to last. This peace is not temporary. This soil is not borrowed. This ground is not a layover on the way to somewhere else. This is the destination. The gardener does not transplant twice what he placed correctly the first time. You are home, and home has been aching for your roots. Everything your root system could not access in the old ground is immediately available in the new. That is the first thing you will notice, the abundance. Not abundance as a concept you affirm during difficult seasons to keep yourself from despair. Abundance as an experience. The tangible, undeniable sensation of a root system that reaches downward and actually finds what it is reaching for. In the old soil you reached and hit rock. Here you reach and find water. Deep, clean, inexhaustible water that has been in flowy these grounds since before I broke the first shovel of dirt to prepare it for your arrival. The drought is over, and it ended the moment your roots made contact. This changes everything about how you grow from this point forward. In the old ground, growth was warfare. Every inch of height required strategy and sacrifice, and a level of effort that left you wondering whether expansion was even worth the cost. But in this soil, growth is not warfare. It is response. You will not have to force yourself to expand. You will expand because the ground is feeding you at a rate your system has never experienced. Growth will feel natural for the first time in your life. The branches you pruned to fit the old environment, the parts of yourself you cut away because the soil could not support their weight, those are going to grow back, not as they were. Stronger, fuller, more expansive than the original growth, because the root system feeding them now has access to depth that the nursery never provided. You are going to rediscover parts of yourself that you thought were permanently removed. They were not removed. They were dormant, waiting for soil rich enough to fund their return. You are about to meet the full version of yourself, and the people who will encounter you in this new ground will not see a tree that barely survived a transplant. They will see a tree in full bloom standing in soil so fertile that its growth rate defies every limitation the old ground imposed. The relocation did not just change your position. It changed your capacity, and your capacity in this new soil has no ceiling. Type bloom if you can feel something inside you already responding to this new season. Parts of yourself that were dormant beginning to wake up, because the soil God is placing you in can finally support who you were always meant to become. Let me show you what this new ground is going to produce through you. The tree you were in the old soil, limited, contained, surviving on nutrients that were never sufficient for your design. That tree is not the tree the world is about to see. What is coming through you now that your roots have access to the right depth is growth at a scale you stopped imagining, because imagining it in the old ground felt cruel, like dreaming of a banquet while starving. But you are not starving anymore, and the dreams that felt cruel are about to become the most accurate predictions of your life. Your branches are going to stretch into spaces you never had access to before. The career that felt capped, the one where you kept hitting invisible ceilings no matter how hard you worked. That ceiling existed because the root system beneath it was too shallow to support what was trying to grow above. In this new soil, the roots go deeper, and when roots deepen, the ceiling lifts. Not incrementally, proportionally. The deeper the root system, the higher the canopy, and the depth available to you now has no flaw. Your professional life is about to enter an expansion you did not know was possible. Relationships are going to change, not through effort, but through environment. A tree planted in rich soil attracts different wildlife than a tree starving in depleted ground. The people drawn to you in this new season will be drawn by the fullness you carry, rather than the need you project. You will not have to convince anyone of your value. The fruit on your branches will speak before your mouth opens. Provision will flow differently here. In the old ground, every resource felt extracted, pulled from resistant earth through exhausting effort. In this soil, provision rises. It moves upward through the root system, the way water travels through healthy ground. Naturally, consistently, without the tree having to strain for what the soil was designed to deliver. And this is only what the first season in the new ground produces. What the second and third seasons yield will make the first look like a seedling. People are going to stand beneath your branches and find shelter they have been searching for. That is the part you could not see from the old soil, the reason behind the relocation. I was not just moving you for your benefit. I was moving you because there are people standing in the new ground right now who need exactly what your branches produce. Shade that only your leaves provide. Fruit that only your root system generates. A presence that only a tree with your specific history of surviving shallow soil and being transplanted into deep ground can offer. Your pain is about to become someone else's covering. They will find you the way weary travelers find a tree in open land. Not because they were searching for you specifically, but because what you carry is so visible from a distance that their feet move toward you before their minds identify why. And when they arrive in your shade, they will rest in a way they have not rested anywhere else. Because your branches were shaped by restriction, which means they know how to create space for people who have been living in tight places. Your limitations trained you to shelter others who feel limited. The influence you are about to carry is not the kind that announces itself with volume. It is the kind that draws people through presence. A tree does not campaign for visitors. It grows, and the growth itself becomes the invitation. Your new soil is going to produce a quality of growth so undeniable that opportunities, collaborations, and connections are going to approach you rather than requiring you to chase them. Your roots will do the recruiting, your fruit will do the convincing, and the people who knew you in the old ground, the ones who watched you survive on minimal nutrients and wondered why you seemed restless, they are going to encounter the transplanted version of you and understand for the first time that what they witnessed was not a tree that could not be satisfied. It was a tree that was being prepared for soil they did not know existed. Your new growth is going to rewrite every narrative anyone ever told about your restlessness. Type shelter if you believe that God is not just relocating you for your own healing, but positioning you to become the covering that others have been searching for. And your pain is about to become your purpose. I need you to understand why I chose your roots for this specific transplant. Not every tree can survive being uprooted. Not every root system can endure the exposure of open air between soils. Not every trunk has the density to hold its weight while the ground beneath it disappears, and the only thing preventing collapse is the grip of the gardener's hands. The transplant I am performing on your life requires a tree with a very specific composition, and I spent your entire life building that composition inside you. You were grown for this exact transfer. Do you know what makes your root system different from most? Flexibility. The years you spent in restrictive soil did not just make you strong, they made you adaptive. Your roots learned how to bend around obstacles, how to find nourishment in thin layers, how to survive on less than what was required, and still produce life. That adaptiveness was not a coping mechanism. It was a design feature I embedded in you because I knew the transplant was coming, and I needed roots that could release one soil and grip another without dying in the transition. Your ability to adapt is the reason you were selected. I chose you because you feel deeply without breaking permanently. I chose you because displacement makes you uncomfortable, but does not make you bitter. I chose you because when the ground shifts beneath you, your first instinct is not to curse the gardener, but to look for where his hands are leading. That instinct is rarer than you know. Most trees would rather die in familiar soil than trust unfamiliar hands to carry them toward ground they cannot see. You chose trust, even when trust trembled. And the identity I am sealing over you today is not simply a tree that was relocated. It is a tree that was specifically designed for relocation, engineered from the root up to not only survive the transfer, but to thrive in the new ground with a speed and a fullness that proves the gardener knew exactly what he was doing when he chose to disturb the soil. You were never a tree that could not settle. You were a tree being saved for better ground. The fear whispering loudest right now is telling you that the new ground might be worse than the old. I hear it circling inside you. What if I uproot from everything I know, and the new soil is just as shallow? What if I leave the familiar and arrive at something that looks different but starves me the same way? What if the restlessness follows me because the problem is not the soil but the tree? What if I am simply a tree that cannot be satisfied anywhere? That last question is the one the enemy designed specifically for you. And I am dismantling it now. A tree that cannot be satisfied anywhere does not produce what you have produced. It does not bear the fruit you have borne in hostile conditions. It does not extend branches or toward others while its own roots are gasping for nutrients. A defective tree in shallow soil withers. You did not wither. You grew, imperfectly, painfully, slowly, but you grew. And growth in insufficient soil is not evidence of a flawed tree. It is evidence of an extraordinary one planted in the wrong ground. The problem was always the soil, never the tree, and the fear that the new ground might disappoint you the same way. That fear is borrowing evidence from a soil I am removing you from and projecting it onto a soil I personally composed. Those are not the same grounds. The old soil was nursery grade, shallow by design, temporary by purpose. The soil I am moving you into was engineered across years for the exclusive use of your root system. Its depth was calibrated to your reach. Its nutrients were mixed to match your specific needs. Its composition was tested against the full projection of what I intend to grow through you. I do not transplant trees into worse ground. That is not how the gardener works. The fear you feel is the root system, remembering the old soil and assuming all soil is the same. But your roots have never touched ground like this before. And the moment they do, every comparison to the old soil will dissolve. Type rooted if you are choosing right now to trust the gardener over the fear, believing that the new ground God prepared for you is nothing like the soil that starved you. During the entire season of restlessness, my hands were never off your trunk. You imagined the displacement as abandonment, as though the gardener had planted you and walked away to tend other trees, leaving you alone in ground that was slowly strangling your roots, while he attended to gardens that mattered more. That narrative felt true because the silence was so convincing. No sign, no confirmation, no hand on your branches whispering, "Hold on, I am about to move you." Just the quiet, relentless ache of a tree that could feel itself outgrowing a space that no one seemed interested in changing. But my hands were on you the entire time, measuring, monitoring, waiting. I was checking your root density every season, running my fingers along the underground network you could not see to assess whether the system had developed enough complexity to survive the transfer. I was testing your trunk strength, applying wind to your life in controlled bursts to see whether you would bend or break under the lateral pressure that transplanting always produces. Every storm you endured in the old soil was not punishment. It was stress testing by a gardener who refuses to move a tree before its structure can handle the journey. You passed every test, often without knowing you were being tested. The seasons where the ground felt hardest, where the soil offered you nothing and the sky seemed indifferent, and the rain bypassed your roots entirely. Those were the seasons I was closest. Not because I was sentimental about your suffering, because those were the seasons where the risk of you breaking was highest and my proximity was most essential. I do not leave trees alone during drought. I stand beside them, and the guilt you carried for feeling restless, while other trees around you seemed content. That guilt assumed I expected you to feel what they feel. But I never expected that. Different trees have different soil requirements. Their contentment in that ground is appropriate for their design. Your restlessness in that same ground is equally appropriate for yours. I designed your restlessness. It was the signal I embedded to tell you, and to tell me, that the time for transplanting was approaching. I know every ring inside your trunk, and each one tells a story only the gardener can read. You carry your history in layers that no one on the outside can see. Every year of growth in restrictive soil added a ring, thin, tight, compressed, recording the truth of what it cost you to expand even slightly in ground that fought your every effort. Those rings are not scars, they are records, and I have read every single one of them with the attention of someone who authored every condition that produced them. Your hidden history is not hidden from me. I know the year the ring was thinnest, the season where growth nearly stopped entirely, because the soil depleted to a level that barely sustained basic survival. You remember that season, the one where getting through a single day felt like an achievement that deserved a standing ovation, but received nothing because nobody around you understood that what they saw as stagnation was actually the most heroic act of endurance you had ever performed. I saw the heroism inside the stagnation. I recorded it. I know the ring that surprised you with unexpected width, the season where something briefly nourished you and growth surged for a few months before the soil reverted to its default thinness. I know the hope that season produced, and I know the specific ache when the nourishment stopped, and you realized the ground had not changed permanently. It had only offered a temporary pocket of depth before returning to its shallow baseline. That ache was the sharpest one, and I held you through it. I know your exact measurements, not the ones the world uses. Income, status, productivity, visibility. The measurements the gardener uses: root depth, ring density, trunk integrity, branch resilience, capacity for fruit, readiness for transplant. And by every measurement that matters to the one holding the shovel, you are ready, fully ready, not almost ready, not conditionally ready, ready today, for ground that matches every ring inside your trunk. Type 11.1. If you believe that the God who knows every hidden layer of your history is the same God who prepared new ground that matches every part of who you truly are, when the ground opens beneath you, do not reach back for the old soil. I am giving you this instruction now because I know what happens during the moment of transfer. The roots, the same roots that spent years being strangled by insufficient ground, will instinctively reach backward toward the familiar. Not because the old soil was good, because the old soil was known. And in the disorientation of being lifted and carried and lowered into ground your system has never encountered, the pull of the known will feel like safety, even though it was the very thing that was killing you. The known is not always safe. Sometimes the known is simply slow death, wearing a comfortable name. When the changes begin to accelerate, when the job shifts, when the location changes, when the relationships reorganize, when the environment you built your identity inside begins to fall away from your roots like dry soil from a lifted tree, do not panic. Do not grip. Do not interpret the falling away as loss. It is not loss. It is release, and every piece of old ground that drops from your root system is making room for the new soil to make direct contact with the parts of you that have been suffocating. Let it fall. All of it. When people question your move, and they will question it because trees that relocate make stationary trees uncomfortable, do not defend the transplant with arguments. You do not owe explanations to soil you have outgrown. The tree does not justify its relocation to the ground it is leaving. It trusts the hands that are carrying it and releases its energy toward the new soil, rather than wasting it in debates with the old. Move without apology. Grieve what must be grieved. Then turn your roots downward. The moment you arrive in the new ground, your only instruction is this: go deep immediately. Do not hover near the surface testing whether this soil is trustworthy. Plunge your roots with the full force of your faith into the depth I prepared for you, and let the ground prove itself through the nourishment it provides. The gardener's hands placed you. The soil will hold you. Trust both and grow. You made it to the moment of transplant, and I need you to feel what this means. A tree that has been root-bound for years, compressed, restricted, slowly starving in soil that could not sustain its design, has just been lifted by the hands of the only one who knew why it could never settle, carried across the distance between where it was planted and where it was always meant to grow, and lowered into ground so perfectly composed for its root system that the first contact between root and soil produced something the tree had forgotten was possible. Relief. The deep kind. The kind that starts in the roots and travels upward through the trunk and reaches every branch and every leaf until the entire tree exhales for the first time in years. Let yourself exhale now. I want to thank you for enduring the nursery, for trusting me in the shallow seasons, for growing in ground that gave you so little and demanded so much, for never fully surrendering to the narrative that the restlessness was your fault, even when you could not articulate why you refused to accept it. Something in you always knew the displacement was a signal rather than a flaw, and that knowing kept you alive long enough for my hands to reach you. Your instinct was correct. It was always correct. The warmth you're feeling right now is the new soil beginning to respond to your presence. It has been waiting for your roots the way the ground waits for rain, knowing that what it holds becomes activated only when the right tree is planted in it. You are activating ground that was dormant without you, and the ground is activating parts of you that were dormant without it. This is what I designed. This is what the restlessness was leading to. This is why I could not let you settle in the old soil, no matter how hard you tried. You belong here, and for the first time in longer than you can remember, the ground beneath you agrees. Type home if you feel something settling inside you right now that has never settled before. And you know in your spirit that the gardener has finally placed you in the ground where you were always meant to grow. You are not the restless tree anymore. That identity, the one that could never settle, never find peace, never stop aching for something it could not name. That identity belonged to the nursery season. It was accurate for the soil you were standing in, but it is not accurate for the ground you are standing in now. The restlessness has completed its assignment. It delivered you to the gardener's hands, and the gardener's hands delivered you to soil that your roots are already gripping with a recognition so deep it bypasses your mind and speaks directly to the part of you that has always known where you belonged. You are planted now, and planted trees do not carry the identity of uprooted ones. The guilt of feeling out of place, released. It was never a character flaw. It was a compass pointing toward ground that had not yet been revealed. The fear that you would never find where you belong dissolved. It was based on a catalogue of shallow soils that had no knowledge of the depth I was preparing. The exhaustion of trying to thrive in conditions that were designed for a different species. Finished. You are no longer metabolizing nutrients meant for smaller trees. You are feeding from a source that was composed exclusively for what I built you to become. Every ring inside your trunk is honored. Every season in the old soil is validated. Every restless night is answered. And the tree that stands in this new ground today, rooted, fed, expanding without resistance for the first time, is not a tree that got lucky with a change of scenery. It is a tree that was deliberately selected by a gardener who knew from the first planting that a second planting was coming. A tree whose entire history was preparation for the soil it is now standing in. You are not displaced. You are not restless. You are not root-bound. You are transplanted, by divine order, into ground that was always yours. Now grow, without apology, without limitation, without ever looking back at shallow soil and wondering if you should have stayed. The gardener's hands are clean, the transfer is complete, and the ground beneath you is already singing. Subscribe to this channel so that every time the gardener speaks to the tree he is tending, his voice reaches your roots without delay. You were not built for shallow ground. You were built for depth that only divine soil provides. The next message is already being prepared for the version of you that is growing in this new place, and you will want to hear it when it arrives. Type transplanted if you are leaving this message, knowing that your restlessness was never a flaw but a relocation order from God. And you are finally standing in the ground where your roots will never be strangled again.